The Murder of Emmett Till by Matthew Henry. Emmett Till was born July 25th, 1941 in Chicago, Illinois. Emmett was raised by a single mother, Mammy Till, on the south side of Chicago. Despite being brought up in a time of racial segregation, in the neighborhood where Emmett was born and raised, there was an affluent black middle class at a time when black-owned businesses were thriving. Mammy Till had a deep affection for her only son. She raised Emmett on her own after her husband died in World War II. Emmett grew up a relatively happy boy. He had a talent for making other people laugh. He loved to tell jokes to his friends and family. It was in August of 1955 that would signify the last few years of Emmett's life. Emmett's Uncle Moses came up from Mississippi to visit the family. Emmett heard that his cousin would be coming along with his uncle to spend the summer down south with the family, and Emmett was excited by the prospect of coming along. Emmett begged his mother to let him go, even though she had other plans in mind. Before Emmett left, his mother left him with some words of advice. Emmett's mother told him that Chicago and Mississippi were two very different places. Emmett's mother knew how different the relations were between blacks and whites in Mississippi as opposed to Chicago. A large number of lynchings and racially motivated murders were very common in Mississippi, especially the Delta region in which Emmett would spend his summer. Lastly, she reminded Emmett that he should be polite to folks down south. After a long, hot day in the sun, Emmett and his friends went into Bryant's to satisfy their thirst with refreshments. It is not certain, but while in the store, Emmett reportedly whistled, flirted, or physically touched the owner's wife, Carolyn. Miss Bryant stormed out the store, frightened. Emmett and his friends left. Little did Emmett know, word had spread unintentionally to Caroline's husband, Roy, the owner of the store, about what Emmett did. Mr. Bryant became infuriated and would not tolerate this kind of behavior, especially in Mississippi. At around 2:30 a.m., August 28th, around 4 days after what occurred at the store, Emmett was kidnapped by Mr. Bryant, along with his half-brother, J.W. Millen. Both agreed that the boy needed to be taught a lesson. Emmett was driven to a nearby plantation shed, where he was severely beaten, including having his eye gouged out. He was shot and killed with a pistol. To finish it off, a weighted cotton gin fan was placed around Emmett's neck with barbed wire. Emmett was thrown into the Tallahatchie River. On August 29th, Bryant and Millen were arrested. Both, attempting to cover up what they did, lied, proclaiming they released Emmett after kidnapping him. Also, they said that Emmett was not the one they were looking for. The trial for the murder of Emmett Till took place from September 19th to September 23rd. The jury was made up of 12 white males who acquitted both defendants. The trial was obviously an unfair one, entirely fueled by racism. The trial created great resentment and anger. The death of Emmett Till was marked as one of the most shocking and deliberate acts of killing in the history of the United States. It was a strong testament to a society deeply rooted in racial discrimination and prejudice. The event created anger and resentment in African Americans, but also affected every other person in the nation at the time. Emmett's kidnapping and lynching provided considerable motivation for the civil rights movement and the attempt to create an equal standing for people that were subject to the likes of racism and servitude for the past 400 years.
Good morning. My name is Catherine. I'm originally a resident of Mississippi Delta, where Emmett Till was murdered in 1959 on a trip there visiting a relative. I remember as a child that we would hear on the radio that he had been killed for whistling at a white woman, and he had iron tied around his neck, and I think it was his right eye had been plucked from his head, and he was thrown into the Tallahassee River. And he was the son of Mamie Till. However, at that time, people in Mississippi were afraid to really protest or make too many objections, except the fact to talk among themselves. But they knew what had happened to Emmett Till was wrong. And there is a school in Chicago, Illinois, on the south side, close to the area where Emmett Till was born and grew up till 14 years old, by the name of it's called the Emmett Till Elementary School. It's located on the south side of Chicago.